Welcome to the second round of the interview for the company called IFocus-Systech, and this is both managerial plus technical round, and this occurred on telephonic. Actually, it is not Teams. It is supposed to be telephonic. Okay, now let's go to the first question. And this interview went for 45 minutes, though it is less in number of the questions, but it went for 45 minutes. So the first question is about difference between break and continuous statements. So for this, we will see a demo and move on to the second question, which is about the keyword static and when do you use it. So majorly you would have seen this keyword used as an access modifier for classes, sorry, not classes, for yeah, for class methods, and also the variables. But why we use static is we use static for better memory management. So there could be cases wherein there will be only certain methods of a class which you wanted to access. So for that you don't have to create an object entirely for the class and start using, I mean, unnecessarily create some space for the entire class. So instead of that, what you can do is if you declare that methods which you wanted to call in a different class, if you just declare them as static, then you can just call those static methods directly without creating any instance to that class um, by the objects. So this way, it will help you saving the memory. Um, that is when you use the static keyword. Okay, so now moving on to the third question, difference between final and finally. So what is the difference between final and finally? For this also we'll see a demo, but before that, let's try to understand theoretically what are the differences between final and finally. So final is a keyword, and it is an access modifier which is used to apply restrictions on a class, method, or a variable. So we'll define the variables if you can recall, and methods also classes as public, static, void. At the same time, you can, instead of using static, you can use final also. And when it comes to the variables, so instead of I mean, when you're declaring strings or integers, you can declare them as final. So when you declare them as final, it means that in case of a variable, it will become constant. You can't change the value which you declare in that final. Similarly, when you declare final against a method, that will be uh, the method that is going to be final. But where in case of finally, this is not a access modifier. This will be one of the block statements which you will use in try catch blocks, mostly in exception handlings. Okay, that is the fundamental difference between final and finally. One is a keyword which is used as an access modifier. Finally is also keyword, but it is to execute a block of statements during exception handling using try catch blocks. And some other differences are like once you declare final, it becomes constant. Like I said, yes, final method can't be overridden. So saying that is final, you can't override the method. You just have to use the method as it is designed. And finals can't class can't be inherited. So you can't even inherit a final class also when you declare a class to be final. Similarly, when you declare variables to be final, you can't change the value in the variable. Wherein final blocks, this will run the important code even if the execution occurs. So the most common way of declaring try catch block is you'll declare try and you will execute some statements, and when you execute those statements, just in case if you happen to face an exception, then you will define how to handle that exception in the exception block. And after the exception, sorry, in the catch block, after the catch block you can add one more block which is finally. So when you add finally block, it will execute those lines of codes without uh, you know giving any care to what is uh, the exception. I mean, whether the exception is thrown or not, it will not care what it is. it will just execute the list of statements which are after the try and catch block. And final method is executed only when we call it. Finally block is executed as soon as the try catch block is executed. So it won't care what is there in try catch block. As soon as you call the try catch block, soon after there will be finally block which will be executed by default. You don't have to do any call of the blocks or anything like you do call for final methods. So that's about the third question. We'll see demo for 1 and 2. Before that, we'll discuss finish about fourth and fifth questions also. The fourth question is order of class in TestNG and how they are decided. So here you just have to understand this question carefully. So initially, how this question is asked is like, how do you decide the priority of the test cases which you are executing in TestNG? So for that, we discussed about some parameters called priority, wherein against the test annotation, you can define the priority as 0, 1, 2, whichever you wanted to decide. In that way, you can control the execution of the test cases which are marked with the annotation at the rate of test in TestNG framework. But this particular question is how do you control the execution of classes itself, not the methods which are inside the class. Instead, how do you control the execution at class level? So for that, there are two ways. One is way as defined here. For example, this is a sample, test ng XML, wherein this is the test tag, and after the test tag, inside the test tag, you have classes. So this is not orderly formed. So you have two classes here, test class 1 and test class 2. So if you want to decide the order in which they are supposed to be executed. For example, normally if you just define it this way, what will happen is under test class 1, it will look for the test cases which are having priority 0. And again in test class 2, it will see the test cases which are having priority 0. So first it will pick up priority 0 test case from here. It will execute, but it won't execute priority 1 test case Instead, the control will go to class 2 and it will pick up the 0 priority test case and execute it. But instead, if you want the execution to be this way, that first it should execute all the test cases which are in class 1 before it goes and look into class 2, even though there is better prioritized test cases than the ones in class 1. So if that is how you want to control the execution, then you can use the grouping concepts. This grouping concept is not like how you tag a test with with a group parameter inside the test annotation, not that group concept. There is this parameter called group by instance. You have to set it true in your test tag. This means that first it will execute all the test cases in test class 1 first, and then it will move to the second class and the methods inside the second class, which is test class 2. So this is one way how you can control the execution of the test classes. And also there is another way wherein you are talking about annotation against the methods, right, inside a class. So similarly, you can keep an annotation at the class level also. Um, so by keeping that annotation at a class level, for example, if you keep annotation at this class level and you keep you priority 1 at this particular test class, then this particular test class will be executed first. Then if you keep priority as 1 or 2, then this will be executed with the second priority. In that way also you can control the execution. So you can leave your comments in below and let me know if what I'm telling is correct or if there is any mistake in it. Please do leave it in the comments. And let's talk about the fifth question is about API error codes. What codes will be written in case of negative test cases for a login page? So here, uh, the interviewer tried to know that how I can relate the GUI execution with respect to the API's execution. So we spoke about the negative test cases first and what is the possible error code that will be written. I'm not going to disclose this answer So I will leave it to you guys. Please mention your answers in the comments below. Okay. So now let's go back to the first and third questions. So difference between break and continue, and how do we understand final and finally. So for this, let's go for a demo. Let me open Eclipse. Okay, here we go. And I focus. Okay, break and continue. Let me open that class. So here, as usual, I have created a method break and continue. I'll show what is written inside it. And here is my main method. Okay, this is old code. Sorry, not old code. Sorry. Okay, so here I created an object for the class, and then okay, in this case I didn't create a method. Instead, I use the constructor itself. So I'm not calling the method separately. So I just have to instantiate the object. Then the code inside the constructor itself will be executed. So now let's go back to the constructor and see what is it. So here I have taken a simple for loop, and inside I have written some statements. Okay, the for loop will execute till the condition is met, which is less than 10, and I have put a condition, if condition, if I equal to 8. So it will repeat the loop till I equal to 8, and when I is 8, it will go and print this statement like demonstrating the break. So when I equal to 8, then I'm giving an instruction to break the loop. Okay, so which means when this condition is met, the execution should come out of the for loop, right? Okay, now let's see the other condition. If I is less than 4, then continue. So when I is less than 4, which means when I equal to 0 to 1 2 3, yeah, 1 2 3. So when this condition is met for the first 4 times, then what it should execute is it should execute this statement, which is continue. So continue means you're not exiting the loop, instead you are going to the second iteration. So whereas here, if I said break, just go out of the loop. Okay, just go out of the loop and execute the other statements which are out of the loop. So there are no statements outside the loops, that's why it may not execute anything. And whereas in continue, so for example, when I equal to 0 for the first time, it will check, it won't go inside, it will check the if condition. uh, Here you got an instruction saying that continue, so it won't go here, instead it will go back to the next iteration. 1, again 1, again it will come here, again it will go, but it will not print this statement. So keeping continue here is taking the control back to the loop without letting the remaining statements to be executed. So that's what continue is doing. For example, if I became 4, then it will validate here, nothing. Then it will validate here, nothing. So it will print the statement. So after 4, it will start executing the statements. And for best demonstration, I can keep the statement, two statements here, just to show that um, it is going out right after this statement. Demonstrating continue. So once it reached continue, it won't print this. It will take the control back. Demonstrating continue. Demonstrating before continue. Okay, what it says, unreachable code. So here itself, the compiler has thrown an exception that after continue, it won't execute any statement here. It is clear, right? So you don't have to even write this statement. The compiler itself has told you that, okay, you're wasting your line of code over here, which means at this point itself, the loop is just counting. Okay, let me run this. Okay, so demonstrating before continue. So it has printed this statement. After that, it didn't print, even though this is inside the for loop. You can see this statement is inside the for loop, but it didn't execute. It didn't come after this. Instead, it has gone to the next iteration. So that's how it has happened for the first four times. And then it iterated running on loop 4, 5, 6, 6, 7. And when it reached 8, so the moment it reached 8, it didn't even go to the next iteration without executing or validating any other statements. It just came out of the loop. It didn't execute till I equal to 9 and 10. So the moment it saw 8, it exited the loop. So that's the difference between break and continue. Now let's talk about understanding final and finally. So for this, there is another line piece of code which is executed inside the main method, which you can see over here. So when I execute try catch block, okay, I'm executing try catch block. So this is to demonstrate finally. Okay, so try block says that if I is greater than some condition, print this catch. So if you face any exception, go to the catch block and print it. And finally, whether you get an exception or not, finally you print this. That's what it means. So let's see two cases. Let's see if I greater than I greater than 4. So I gave I greater than 4 condition. So I declared I equal to 5, which means I greater than 4. So it should execute this statement. Since it is not getting any exception, it should not print this. And finally, irrespective whether the exception is there or not, it has to print this statement. Let me execute it. Okay, so it has printed the statement, printing the try statement because it satisfied the condition. It didn't print the exception statement and printing the finally statement also. Okay, so now let us see the case of exception. So in this case, it has printed the final message when there is no exception. Now let us run this. In this case, you should get an exception because 5 divided by 0 is something which is not automatically possible. Now there is an exception. It gone to try condition and try block. The condition was met, not met. Instead, here it has seen an exception. So the control went to catch block instead of executing the remaining statements in the try. It printed um, error messages and the exception message. So catch block is executed. Now in this case, the exception is come, but even the exception is there, so the finally statement is also executed. So irrespective of the exception, the finally statement or the block of code which is under finally will be executed. That's what fundamentally finally is all about. And when it comes to final, mm, okay, so here I'm talking about this variable called MSG. I have declared MSG as a final statement. So this variable should be the final. You can't change inside MSG. That's what it means when you declare that variable as final. Now let me try to change something inside message. So I try to reassign some other string. So it resulted me in some compilation error and it says remove final modifier of the message. Why it is asking me to remove final is I wanted to change something for that variable and it is not possible as long as I declare it as final. So that's what the fundamental difference between final, and finally. So you can follow me on my blog 4westels.blogspot.com, and also I have put this. Okay, you can follow me on my blog 4westels.blogspot.com. I put this interview in my blog over here. You can see. So you can see the interview questions, and you can go to iFocus interviews. Click on first round. So you will see it. So there is first round. Okay, that's the interview process. There is first round. Mm, and the questions are here and the video is here, which you can access for the first round, and I'll upload the second round video right after this. But questions wise, you can see the first round questions here and also the second round questions over here. So do follow me on my blog as well, and also in my channel, so that when you wanted some information, you just quickly refer to this blog. So thank you for watching the video. Bye.
Thank you for watching the video. For more videos like this, do subscribe to the channel and share it to your friends. You can also visit the playlist in the channel, and those who like to read the content can visit the blog 4verstales.blogspot.com. And for any queries or you want to join us, drop an email to sharetesttube@gmail.com. Bye for now. Stay tuned for more content.